Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and tonight I want to welcome Davy Gallagher and Ryan Gavalier back to the channel. Tonight we are looking at the Beach Boys' 1967 album, Wild Honey. So let's get started right after this.
This is, the comparison isn't better and worse, it just occurred to me that there's a contrast. The mamas and the papas are into a kind of vocal sound. And
They've had, I think the mamas and papas have projected their vocals with not quite as much emphasis on a track, and I think their vocal, you could say that you can turn the Beach Boys upside down, just the record or the track or whatever, and I think they have as much vocal as we do track, you know?
Yeah.
Kind of look at it that way, whereas I think that we emphasize a little more track than vocal, and I think that's, I guess, in that proportion. There's a lot of ways to look at it, but they really did, their vocal thing stuck way out, and I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think they did it beautifully.
Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and I want to welcome Ryan Gavalier and Davy Gallagher here tonight. And here we are for our latest edition in our Beach Boys series, and we're looking at 1967's Wild Honey. Gentlemen, nice to have you. How is everybody doing tonight?
Great.
It's like the gang is all back.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a new year, new shit, and here we are. We're doing Wild Honey, which, well, you know, we were bound to do Wild Honey. Actually, we were trying to go through the whole catalog. It may take us forever to do it, but someone's got to do it. So anyway, tonight's Wild Honey. This record came out December 18th, 1967. This was the 13th studio album by the Beach Boys. This is where Brian kind of steps away a bit and Carl's taking over to some degree. If anybody's heard any like the bootlegs or the backing tracks, obviously Brian Wilson is still calling the shots. You know, we might hear a lot more Carl here, but it's still Brian's baby based on what I've heard. So anyway, like I said, 13th studio album. They started this record right after Late in Hawaii, which they recorded in Hawaii, but they never released it. Those tracks are out there. What's that comp? 1967. What was that?
That one, 1967.
Thank goodness, Davy Gallagher, the man with the props. But the Leyden Hawaii sessions are on there, and holy crap, hold that up again, Davy. For anyone who's a Beach Boys fan and hasn't seen that, I highly recommend that CD. It's great stuff. But anyway, tonight we're talking about Wild Honey, the Beach Boys 1967. And I think we started out with Ryan last time. Let's start out with Mr. Gallagher. You want to start out talking about this record?
Sure. Right. So thank you. Nice to be back. Feels like home.
Feels like home.
Feels like, not the best home, more like a children's home.
It's okay.
It'll do. It's a riff. I love this record. Just to put it, just to set the expectations, because I'm wearing a Wild Honey t-shirt, so it's probably not too much of a surprise. I adore this record. Came out only 3 months after Smiley Smile. 3 months. Because they hadn't released anything in a year. Capitol said, well, you better give us 2 very, very quickly. And that's including the time it took for them to make and reject Late in Hawaii. They still managed to produce 2 in 3 months, which is quite remarkable. And the original plan for this was from Capitol just to do Smile, a 10-track version of Smile, which, thank God that never happened. But Brian was insistent that Carl help more. So it wasn't that Carl was taking over more. Brian actually said, I'm kind of done with all the arrangements and stuff. I'm burnt out. Carl, you're helping out more. So it was more Brian inviting Carl to join in the party, and it works very well here. I think this is a terrific sounding record in a totally different way from a more lush one. The tracks themselves, I mean, that opening with the electrotheremin is so cool. On the title track, Carl doing R&B, which he does so much in this record, is perfect. He does more of a soulful holler rather than a kind of balladeer thing that we might associate with Carl. Mike Love said that it was inspired by thinking what Stevie Wonder might be singing at this point, but honestly, I don't think Stephen Wilson I
One
don't
of
think,
those Stevens.
I don't
Yeah.
think Stevie Wonder could even do it.
Stephen Wonder.
I don't think Steve McQueen could do it justice. No, I don't think Stevie Wonder could even sing it as well as Carl at this point, because Stevie was only 17. But Carl sings the hell out of Wild Honey. I love those bits where it kind of dips down and gets a bit darker, where the theremin disappears. Not good will it do you to stand here in front of me? All those parts. I think that's a fantastic. Gives it a real tonal shift. Aren't you glad? Kind of Daydream, like the Loving Spoonful or Monkeys when they took control of their own music. Very nice kind of dream pop stuff with stripped down harmonies and horn parts, but gorgeous Brian vocal. So it's like they're taking the essence of the Beach Boys and saying, okay, we'll do some harmonies, but not overload them, and we'll still have arrangements, but they won't be overblown. They won't be orchestral and things. We'll have smaller horn sections. Speaking of Stephen Wonder himself, I Was Made to Love Her, of course, was a Stevie song, and here they cover it with Carl singing. Only 4 months after the original by Stevie came out. So it would have been very fresh in the public imagination because it was a number 2 smash. It's very similar to the Stevie Wonder version, so I'm not surprised it wasn't released as a single or anything. But you do get it filtered through the Beach Boys harmony sound, which is quite cool. So Carl gives it as a whole. It's really cool to hear him just singing these kind of classics. I'd love to have heard a Carl soul album, to be honest. Country Air, one of my favourites from this record, and I think I did read it's Brian's favourite too. I'm pretty sure it's in the liner notes here. I love the way that they use humming and things percussively rather than have big arrangements. So it's so they're not using harmony; they're using humming, which is just such a great. It's like anybody can do that. So they're kind of saying, let's make it a bit more, accessible for people, because anybody can hum. Not everybody can do those harmonies like the Beach Boys, to say the least. I love the detuned piano, which Brian intentionally wanted to use on this album to give it a more, it said something like a 12-string guitar sound. Just gives it a kind of quirky quality. And again, it's just so infectious with that. Got that country, just fantastic. I love it to bits. Very simple, just gorgeous though. A thing or two is a bit of a rocker, a little bit undercooked. Maybe needs a bit more work. Even though this album is stripped down, I think this just doesn't have enough to it in the first place. But you can hear a few things in it that are Do It Again proto in the Do It Right, Baby. You can kind of hear it in those parts. That's where Do It Again's kind of genesis comes from. And we're already on to side 2 because this is such a short album in 24 minutes. Darling. Great side opener for side 2. Brian wanted to give this to Three Dog Night. Fucking hell.
Well, I think they did. Three Dog Night do a version of it,
Well,
or were they Wildwood then?
He gave them a Redwood.
Redwood.
He gave it to Ooh, baby, it's a Wildwood. Mm-hmm. He gave it to Redwood, and Carl said, No, that's a Beach Boys song, yoink. So took it back, and Three Dog Night's version was not allowed to be released until the 90s. And thank God, because Three Dog Night are terrible. Fuck Three Dog Night.
Well, that Three Dog Night version's not too bad. It's on that 2 CD.
Oh, it's because it's a great song. But if you ever if you ever do a Three Dog Night series, I'm out.
Well, I don't think I could do a Three Dog Night series.
Yeah. Well, you just be doing cover albums after cover albums. That's all they ever bloody did.
Right.
I mean, it's cool that they insisted to take it back because it's nothing earth-shaking, but a good piano-led love song. Another great Carl vocal. It is Carl's album. It really is. And it's his sound. It's just perfect for him. I'd love Just Once to See You. Very earnest, really stripped back. A lot of it is just Brian singing with the acoustic guitar backing. And who doesn't love that? The title being repeated towards the end with the I'd love just once to see you in the nude. End. That's just a fantastic end. Gives it kind of creepier vibe, to be honest. That it just wants to do it once. Just once he wants to do it, please. Yeah, that was
kind of cringy, but you know, it was the late 60s.
Who cares? Just once though, that's the part that gets me. Only wants to do it once, not twice. Here Comes the Night, unfortunately not a cover of the song by them, but another odd offbeat poppy track, very quirky, where the pretty harmonies of the Beach Boys are almost self-parodied intentionally, and they're doing kind of bad harmony where they're singing over each other but not in communion. They are kind of doing it intentionally to kind of almost mock their own sound. So it's kind of abrasive and not quite in time. And then it adds that dun, 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 that kind of Boy from New York City, or Jenny, 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 won't you take a ride with me? That kind of piano sound on it, which I love as well. Let the Wind Blow, all in 3/4 time, so it's their first complete waltz. And everyone's vocals are terrific on it. I think Mike's vocals are fantastic. Very tender, actually, for Mike. I think he's terrific on it. And Very Tender sounds it up. Let the Wind Blow, sound-wise, it sounds like a Smile track to me. Very much like a Smile kind of song. And How She Boogalooed It. Now, there's so many tracks on this compilation that the rating is tiny because there's 65 tracks, because so many of these songs are like 2 minutes long or 1 minute long. And I swear to God, you can't read it because it's white on light orange. And it looks like it says, while she poo-pooed it. It's a different song. So Why She Poo-pooed It, or How She Boogalooed It, apparently, is a sign of things to come. It's the first Beach Boys original song with no Brian. No Brian whatsoever. He's not involved in the writing, the production, or the playing. He had been separate when they'd done some instrumentals, and they were all just done by the Wrecking Crew and things. But this is the first Beach Boys song that Brian is not on, so it's very much a sign of things to come. And it's a really good school old rock and roll song, very old school rock and roll. You can hear the band loving not just the old school harmony groups that we know they like the Four Freshmen, but here you can hear Eddie Cochran, that kind of thing, Gene Vincent. And then the organ solo that comes in is very Johnny and the Hurricanes, very Red River Valley. So even for 1967, this is an intentionally retro sound. And then Mama Says would have been such a weird way to end the album then, but even now it is, because as we know now, that's the middle part of Vegetables from Smile that was cut from the version that was released on Smiley Smile, but is on the final version of Smile and Brian's version. The eat a lot, sleep a lot, brush them like crazy. That just goes straight into the I'm going to be well, my vegetables, I'm going to sleep well, my vegetables. So it's a very strange kind of minute to add on. I'm not sure why they only added a minute on when the album itself was 23 minutes and 58 seconds. But one of the major reasons to recommend this compilation is that Laid in Hawaii isn't just good. It's got Brian singing the letter on the box top. So you get to hear Brian singing Alex Chilton, which is you get to hear them doing With a Little Help from Our Friends just after that came out, literally weeks after the Sgt. Pepper's came out. And then you get all sorts of alternate takes, unreleased tracks, and you even get the Smiley Smile sessions that were unreleased at the time. So for a really good value compilation that doesn't need to be in a stupid sized box set and whatnot, this is just ridiculously good. 2 CDs, and all of it's essential. And to have an unreleased intended Beach Boys album just as a bonus, it's insane. So yeah, and even Wild Honey, it's the first time, the only place you can get it in true stereo. So
you can get a lot of it on here though.
Yeah, but this is the only place that's fully stereo.
I do have a question, Davey, real quick. On the live box, the Sia Tunes live box has a lot of Laid in Hawaii. If I could say it, it would help. But I can't remember. Are there more tracks on the 67 comp? Is it the whole thing?
It's the whole thing because you get the alternate takes as well. So you get 2 versions of Brian doing the letter and things.
Mhm.
Which is a terrific version as well.
Yeah, if you can pick that up, I don't know how long this stuff's going to be in print, but I would highly recommend that 67.
Yeah, I mean, there's the twofer with Smiley Smile as well, which I've got, but that is the definitive version to me, because it's just that new mix on the new stereo mix just sounds so sublime that it just sounds like a much more expansive album, and just it's wonderful. I love it to bits.
So it
So
doesn't, as a Beach Boys purist, that doesn't, you like the remix. You like some of these
yeah,
intended mono albums
yeah, because at
remixed
this
with.
point, Brian wasn't doing the Brian sound, so it doesn't need to be in mono. I'm not particularly fussed about that. I'd
Mhm.
be a bit different when it's intended, and Brian's really doing his no, it needs to be mono. Or I'm doing my Phil Spector thing back to mono.
Mhm.
Brian wasn't caring about that kind of stuff by here. And this kind of soul music and R&B style needs to be heard in stereo for me.
Well, you hear it in stereo, just like you said, it really opens it up.
Yeah,
The sound stage, you
yeah,
almost feel like you're there.
yeah.
But
It's
I'm just going to say, if I'm going to listen to Pet Sounds, though, I'm going to listen to the mono mix. But
well, yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That's when Brian was giving a shit. So,
right.
that's about the last time you would really need to have to worry about stereo or mono.
Mhm.
But for me, it's a 9 out of 10. Just an absolute banger of a Beach Boys album. So I love it to bits.
Daddy Bog says if you already have the vinyl, the box sets can be overkill hearing some of the songs done various times. Well, it depends. I mean, I like to hear, it's like a lot of the Beatles stuff on the Revolver box that
Yes.
just came out. It's nice to hear them working on them in the studio. Same with all these See a Tune box sets.
Mhm.
It's nice to hear them in the process of working on the tracks. It doesn't make it my definite version. I still want the final version, but it gives you a little bit of a oversight. The best were on 8-track, the worst on CD. Sound like the original mono album, yeah. There's a lot of mono reprocessed out there too back in the day. Wait a minute. Did anyone get the version of Pet Sounds with just the vocals?
Yes, because it's on the
I don't
box
have
set.
that. Oh,
Yes.
it's on the green box set?
So you get the two box set, the two anniversary editions. The 30th has got just the instrumentation, and the
Okay.
50th has got just the vocals. So you can either pick one and sing along, or pick the other and play along, whichever you choose.
There you go. But Rich, I have not heard the version with just vocals. Yeah, exactly. Some Beach Boys on 8-track. Of course, Ernesto, you've got Beach Boys on 8-track. That's a given. Do you have Smiley Smile on 8-track? Chime in on that. So anyway, let's do like a Davey, what would you give this album out of 10? And we'll do like a
Um,
average at the end.
Probably go with 9, because that's what I gave it about a minute ago when I said 9 out of 10.
I think 9 out of 10 is fair. I mean, I think this is probably the strongest of the post Pet Sounds albums. Well, no, wait a minute. If Smile would have came out, obviously it would have.
I don't know.
Right.
I just think this whole run from Smiley Smile to Bit Holland is just absolutely fantastic.
There you go. All right. So Davy Gallagher gives it a 9. Let's throw it over to Mr. Gavalier. We haven't seen Ryan for a while. Well, Ryan, welcome to the show. Nice to see you. Hope everything's all good in Kent.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Um,
So what's your take on this record?
all right, so Wild Honey. This was actually the second Beach Boys album that I ever heard after Pet Sounds. And I was pretty young. I think I was probably like 13 when I got into this album, and I absolutely loved it. I was listening to it all the time, especially gravitating to songs like Darling or Here Comes the Night. But yeah, I just really loved the album. I listened to it a ton. And honestly, I hadn't listened to it in a long time though. It'd probably been about 5 or 6 years since I had heard this album last. But I held a very high opinion of it. And when I put it on the first time in a while, I wasn't sure if I liked it quite as much as I did at that point of time, but I listened to it a bit more, and I think that I like the album a lot. Not quite as much as I used to, but it's still one of my favorite Beach Boys albums. It's pretty consistent, honestly, song wise. I mean, you hear some very different sounds for the band. Some like R&B stuff, some kind of quirkier things that are kind of lo-fi. You got like some psychedelic stuff, and just some good pop too. All the vocals are knocking it out of the park uh throughout this entire album, and I just think it's a lot of strong material. I mean, Wild Honey is a super cool song with Carl singing. I mean, I've never heard a theremin do bad things. Like, they're just so awesome. I love to use them on my own music, and you know, I just love hearing it on this song. It's real wild and quirky. Um, Definitely like a good follow up to what was happening on Smiley Smile. Um, and Carl just gives a great vocal performance. He sings his ass off on this song. He's so soulful and kind of like on the upper register of his vocals. At times, almost not hitting the notes, but like it's just so good. Like, because it's just like it feels so real, and you just know that he's like totally singing his ass off, and it's just a real catchy song. Aren't You Glad is pretty chill song. It's kind of Beatles-esque in some ways. And it has really solid vocal performance by Mike and Brian, actually. I mean, it's not like an amazing song, but it fits on the album well, and I think it's a solid track. I Was Made to Love Her is a pretty sweet cover of a Stevie Wonder song. I mean, I love Stevie Wonder, but like, yeah, Carl sings his ass off on this. It's pretty epic. I mean, once again, almost not hitting the notes at times because he's like singing so hard, but like it's just great. It's a real stomper of a track, honestly. I dig it quite a bit. Country Air is probably my number 2 song on this album. I just love those harmonies in that chorus so much. Get a breath of that country air. It's just so beautiful. And they create a real wall of sound with their voices, honestly. It's kind of overwhelming how beautiful it sounds. A thing or two I like quite a bit. It's really quirky. It has a little bit of a Beatles-esque feel at times, but then it goes into like just some weird like rock and roll type of stuff. It's just a quirky, weird song. I like it. Darlin', great. It's super catchy. I mean, it's probably the most popular song on this album. And it's just, it's another endearing Carl song. Um, Honestly, like it's kind of a weird track. It feels like the groove of it is kind of like proto disco, that kind of like upbeat feel. I just feel like I could dance to it and like roller skate or something, like but yeah, I like that song quite a bit. A great Carl performance. I'd love just once to see you use a cool quirky Brian track, kind of like a acoustic and like lo-fi feeling. It's very do it yourself and like intimate feeling. It's just kind of like it's very acoustic, and he gives a great vocal performance on here. It's pretty cool track. It's Brian doing weird things, and I love that. But Here It Comes the Night is awesome. It's got chugging piano riff on it. I love Brian's vocals, like the way "Here comes the night, here comes the night." Like it's just so nasty for Brian, honestly. It's
You're right. Yeah.
it's purposely like bad, and I love that so much. Everybody is singing all over the place, like Davy said. It's just kind of a mess, but it's a wonderful mess, and it grooves. Let the Wind Blows, pretty chill track. Once again, this one's Mike, Brian, and Carl singing on it. Not one of my favorites on the album, but it's pretty beautiful still. How She Boogalooed It, though, that's a pretty sweet track. I really like that one. You got Carl singing his ass off again. It's this old rock and roller kind of Chuck Berry type feeling thing. Or like, I don't know. You know, just like Bo
Deadly.
Diddley, yeah, whatever. Yeah, Bo Diddley. Yeah, just kind of that kind of feel. But he's real powerful on this one. It's great. Mama Says is a solid end. You know, it's quirky, it's psychedelic, it's weird, great harmonies. Yeah, I don't know. I dig the album quite a bit. Is it my favorite Beach Boys album? No. I still obviously like Pet Sounds and Friends and Sunflower and Smiley Smile more, you know, but I'd say it's like fifth or sixth place for me for the band. It's
Okay.
still in that upper
That's fair.
tier of albums. I think it's a more consistent one because I mean the band has a lot of stuff that isn't consistent, like, but I do think this one pretty much top to bottom is great stuff. I'm gonna give it an 8.5.
Ho, 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 ho. All right. I think that's more than fair
Yeah.
because you dig it.
Oh, for sure.
Holy crap. I'll tell you though, excellent, Ryan. I love that. Thanks for your review. I appreciate it. And Davey,
Sure.
both of you just make me just so proud. My take on this record, you know,
Thanks,
back
Dad.
in the what? What?
Thanks, Dad.
You're welcome. You know, well, someone's got to have that role. This record, back in the day, I wasn't so taken by it because I was always so Brian Olsen, good God, Grant, Brian Wilson.
Stephen Wilson.
Yeah, Stephen, or let's go with Stephen Wilson.
Stevie
I was
Wonder.
and Stevie Wonder. I was so into Brian's work that, you know, I'd looked at this as thinking pretty much it's a Carl album, even though later I've heard, you know, bootlegs and stuff like that. And, you know, Brian's still calling the shots, even though he's letting Carl do much more here. But, you know, still Brian's still holding the reins. I don't think that there's a bad track on here. I mean, you could look at, you know, some of the lyrics are a little bit questionable, but you know, it was, you know, like I'd love to just once see you is kind of cringy, but I don't know it. Brian he wrote that by himself. Brian, I think, needs a collaborator. He's fine doing the music, but I don't think I'd let Brian write lyrics, to be quite honest, especially in the late 60s. Because let's say, you know, he's a little bit taking more of a back seat at this point, but it's still fine. The melody's great. You know, all the tracks on here are great. God, Darling is an absolute classic, you know? So Carl was 100% right not to let Danny Hutton and the boys take that one, you know? Play Hardball, because that is such a Beach Boys song. But I think that this record on the whole, just kind of not look at the lyrics so much, because as we looked in some of the later Beach Boys stuff, there's some questionable lyrics too. But man, the music on these records is just absolutely incredible. I mean, we don't have the big ornate production. We don't have the Wrecking Crew on here. You might have some people. I don't know, Davey. You might know that. Are there some Wrecking Crew people playing on this?
Yeah, you've got the horn section and stuff,
Yeah.
but it was still done at Brian's home studios, so it's very lo-fi.
Right.
It's basically a homemade album.
It is,
so-
but that's part of the nice quality to the record too.
Yeah.
I think it adds to it.
yeah.
So, I mean, in the late 60s, don't forget about, we got Bob Dylan making it, stripping down things. The Beatles did the White Album. We're stripping things down. We're done with doing all that psychedelia and all that big production stuff. So at least for a while. What would I give this record? I'm going to have to say I'm with Ryan on this, and I'm going to give it an 8.5 because I think as post Pet Sounds, late 60s stuff, I think this is probably a must-have record for anybody getting into the Beach Boys. I'm going to give this an 8.5. And like I said, I've let me put this in there. Let's see, 8.5. And I'm taking everybody's who was on the chat and gave a rating, and we're going to compile it all. So compiling everything from the peanut gallery, and we come up with a 7.428. So I'm going to go with a 7.4. So let's just do 7.5, which I think is fair. I mean, you can't compare this album to Pet Sounds. It's totally its own album, or any of those big Brian Wilson productions back in the earlier 60s. But I think a 7.5 is good. That's not bad.
It doesn't matter, baby.
I know. It's all about talk. It's all about the music.
Yeah, the discussion's more important than the end result of the score. Interesting, though, that this was another flop in America. Didn't get top 20. Right. But once more, massive hit in the UK. Got to number 7.
Well, the Beach Boys, were much more accepted with this later material in the UK. They never really lost any popularity.
I think a major reason for that is all the early stuff with the surfing in the cars, that never ever came over here. Mm-hmm. So they were never associated with that. So they were never tied down to that, or the Beach Boys shouldn't be doing this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So when they started having more success in about 64, 65, that was what people were basing it on. So they were basing it on pretty much starting with All Summer Long rather than Surfing Safari and Surfing USA and things like that. Because Wild Honey was a hit single. You still hear that on the radio to this day. It's never disappeared. And it's interesting, though, if they were having so many flops in a row, if I was a Capitol executive after this record came out and I was going, God, these guys just don't have it anymore, I'd be throwing money at Carl Wilson to try a solo project.
Even that early?
Yeah, well, especially that early while he's still young enough to be a pop star.
Right.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that this was the time for stripping back. Mm-hmm. That wouldn't really happen till the next year, because this is still 67. The White Album was 68. Dylan's John Wesley Harding
67.
That was 68.
Oh, I guess you're right. I guess that was 68. So maybe this led the charge.
Yeah, the band was 68, music from Big Pink. So we're talking about, and the Stones went back to basics in 68 after Satanic Majesties in 67. Mm-hmm. So we're still very much in the psychedelic realm here. This is just about the time that people were thinking about going back to basics. But it's certainly not when they were doing it yet. So I think they were leading the charge in terms of, let's strip it down a bit.
Daddy Bog, shortly thereafter, they didn't draw crowds at all, but they were still drawing crowds in the UK.
Yeah,
I saw them in Atlantic City play in front of 200 people. What year was that, Daddy Bog? Because Daddy Bog, he was probably there at that time. But so maybe, of course, by this time, the Beach Boys were really, after Pet Sounds and such, they were really thought, a lot of musicians dug them. So, they were, at this point, they were probably much more of a musician's band. So I could see where Wild Honey comes out and, a lot of these bands hear that and go, holy crap, they're stripping down.
Yeah.
I don't know how often that's quoted in the rock press, but I can't imagine anybody else at this time. Well, Smiley Smiles, you can't get much more stripped down than Smiley Smile. Daddy Bog saw him in 69. Okay.
69 was a great time for them as well.
Star, I didn't know there was a Beach Boys cruise. And I'm going on the 80s cruise in March. I don't know.
I don't think I'd go on a beach
one cruise at a time, Star.
What if Mike Love's on it? Jesus Christ, man overboard.
Is it the Mike Love cruise? I know.
Sorry,
On the,
he would need to be Natalie Wood by the end of that cruise. Fucking
Mhm. Let's see. Rich, lots of indie rock types I know get more into the later album era, like this one. They have a cult appeal. Yeah, I get it.
yeah, it's got that kind of lo-fi vibe that resonates a lot more for some people, for a lot of indie acts, because you can do it rather than you can't do Pet Sounds. You know, you can do this.
Pete Jones, there was a time the British bands all exploded and they all wrote and played their own material. Cream was in their prime, Hendrix, the Who were about to explode. Yeah. Wall Star, I can guarantee it's the Mike Love cruise. I don't even have to look.
Stuck in a boat, we make love. Jesus Christ! I could take my chances with a
Daddy,
shark-infested waters.
I'd rather go on the Brian Wilson Al Jardine cruise if there was one. I would be game for that.
Can you imagine the conversation? Hi, Brian.
Hi, Brian would just look blankly into your look away.
Oh, I can't imagine.
I can't imagine keeping Brian on a cruise for a week. You know?
Karaoke with Brian, that'd be good.
I mean, if you ever watch any more recent footage, they're practically propping him up. You know.
He's doing grand. He's a fine age as well. He's 80. Let's not forget.
I know, but Paul McCartney's 82.
Yeah, but you know, Brian was in a lot of stuff back in the day. So
I know. We're
for
lucky
Brian
to have Brian.
So for Brian to still be going, and bless her Melissa for what she's done with him and stuff.
I'm just joking. I love Brian, but you know, you look at a lot of that footage and you're going, oh boy. But hey, it is what it is. At least he's still here with us. Star Peters said, okay. Daddy, Brian rarely performs now, sits at the piano and sings a little. Star would throw herself overboard.
Oh no, I'll throw Mike overboard and me and you have a party start.
Star, I don't want anything to happen to you, so no throwing yourself overboard. Yeah. And how's the COVID? Because you mentioned you had COVID. Are you feeling any better? Ernesto, Beach Boys Good Vibration Cruise, that's what it's called. Well, believe me or not, Ernesto, the 80s cruise cost me enough money that I won't be going on the Beach Boys cruise.
Every night, Mike doing the same set. Can you imagine? It's automatic when I talk with old friends that come on, everybody, turns to girls and hey, little tomboy.
And D Walrus, hey, thanks for popping in. No Dennis Wilson to sing Sea Cruise.
That's brilliant. Thank you Eddie. That's brilliant.
All right, Daddy Bog, that's a good one.
That was good.
But you know, we do miss Dennis Wilson. I mean, holy crap.
He was dead before I was born, so I can't really miss him too much.
I remember him. I was at the Columbus State Fair in 83, 82, riding on the Sky Ride, and the Beach Boys were playing in the grandstands, and I could hear Dennis singing.
His voice in 82 must have
been. And he was a bit rough, and well, but I love Dennis, so wish he was still here.
I wish Carl was still here.
All right, Star, it's good to know. Well, yeah. Glad you're hanging in there. Hope you get better.
Yeah, get better soon, Star.
Rich, I saw Brian Wilson 20 years ago back by the not the Peppermints, the Wondermints.
Wondermints, yeah.
And he just sat there behind the keyboard barely singing. It was still a great show. Yeah, I saw Brian, what was the first tour? Help me, Ryan, Davy. I think it was 2000. The first Pet Sounds tour?
2002, it did Pet Sounds, which was I saw him do Smile in 2005 on that tour. Mm-hmm. And I did plenty of singing, but the Wondermints are such a great band, you don't really need them to do don't really need Brian to be the instrumentation anymore. You know, he's not going to go up there and play bass like it's the 60s again. And he did plenty of singing. So
I was going to say, if anybody can pick up those Wonderment CDs out in the wild or ever find them, always look for those because they're great power pop. Highly recommend it. But I saw Brian on that first Pet Sounds tour, and he was playing, he was singing, but you know, he's a lot younger then. You know, it's all good. I'm friends with Ed Roach, former Beach Boys photographer, was a good friend of Dennis and Christine McVie. Good old Ed Roach. All right, nice, Daddy Bog.
America.
Well, anyway, hey, we cranked this out in 40 minutes.
Hey.
We're really getting good at these reviews,
Well,
gentlemen.
it's a short album.
You know.
So.
But anyway, folks, we can wrap this up. I want to thank everybody for showing up. It was fun shooting the proverbial.
Shooting the make love.
That's right. And like I said, our average score between everybody in the peanut gallery and here. Oh, Ernesto says price for midship balconies $4,200. That's about what we paid for the 80s cruise. We're on the balcony. Well, we've got like we're on the balcony, but we face the water.
But she pretty get a job on the cabin crew.
Yeah. I saw Beach Boys with Santana, Jefferson Starship, and Grateful Dead, and Joan Baez.
Well, you got some good friends.
What year was that? Well, anyway, this was a lot of fun, and we will have more Beach Boys coming. In fact, I don't know. We could talk real quick. We got a couple minutes. What do you think we should cover next?
Didn't we say we'd do one of the pre-Pet Sounds ones next, like
Summer Days?
Summer Days or Today? You happy with either of those, Ryan?
What do you think, Ryan?
Let's do Summer Days.
Summer Days.
Okay.
All right. Well, gentlemen,
and Summer Nights.
And Summer Nights. I will be in contact, and we will schedule that later. So anyone looking for our next Beach Boys show will be Summer Days and Summer Nights, and we're going to be looking at that. Pete Jones, fun show. Have a great evening. Great to see Ryan. It is great to see Ryan and David. Holy crap. Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. It's still less than the Kiss cruise. Well, Kiss has a lot of. They need a lot
throwing
of
them
money.
all overboard. They'd be knackered by the end of that one.
D was kicked out of a Beach Boys concert in '82. Oh, you were for walking in front of the stage from my seat? They threw you out for that? Good God. All right, D saw him in 1980. D wanted a better view. Well, I get that. Ernesto says a good show. All right, gentlemen, I want to thank Davy and Ryan for coming on. And our score was, out of everybody, we gave it a 7.5. So listen to this record, pick it up. Get ready for our next episode of Summer Days and Summer Nights. And I want to wish everybody a good night, and especially Star Peters. Thanks for coming on, and you get better. Have a great night. And we'll see you on the next one.